Here's the snap. Winston rolling right. Goes to pass on the other. It's caught! It's caught! It's caught! Touchdown FSU! Noles retake the lead.
And all-access look at Florida State athletics.
He's tackled. Game over. Noles are the champions of college football. Telvin Smith with the tackle to bring down Mason. Celebrate Seminole.
From the Seminoles.com Pod Center, high atop Doak Campbell Stadium, here's your host, Jonathan Shalacy.
Welcome back. Another Seminoles.com podcast. We appreciate you guys sticking with us last week. You know, in the wake of tragedy here on the Florida State campus, Tim Linefeld and myself felt no need to get on the podcast. We felt that everybody needed to do their own thing, and what a terrible tragedy it was. But again, a great job by FSU PD and Tallahassee PD to really minimize what could have been very, very disastrous. And again, FSU united really here. You could really feel the support throughout the community, throughout the nation, and it was quite something. Thank you so much for joining us on the Seminoles.com podcast. Jonathan Schlesy alongside Tim Linefeld. And in the wake of tragedy, Florida State did host a football game inside Doak Campbell Stadium, a close one, a 20-17 ball game where Florida State had to kick a field goal in the last seconds, 7 seconds left on the clock in order for Florida State to pull out yet another win, 27 in a row. And, Tim, that was quite a game.
Yeah, man, it really was. I thought that Boston College had a really good game plan, the perfect game plan for them, I think, to maximize their strengths and kind of attack Florida State, to have that game close in the fourth quarter. And, we're looking out onto the field now, and you can sort of see as Boston College, midway through the fourth quarter there, had a drive that looked like a game-winning kind of drive. They took up almost 9 minutes off the clock, had a go-ahead field goal set up, and just missed it. So, those are the kind of things that happen when you're on the run, the kind of run that Florida State is on right now, winning 27 straight games. Sooner or later, you're going to get some breaks, and obviously this team has gotten a few this season. I thought it was a really nice job by Boston College, but also obviously an even better job by Florida State to withstand that and again, win for the 27th straight time.
Well, it's the first time under Jameis Winston that Florida State did not score 30 points. They scored just 20 in this ball game, and you look at just even the first quarter. Both teams just had one possession each. That was the kind of game that we were playing. It was raining. It's still raining here today.
Yeah, it looks a lot today like it did on Saturday.
And when you have those kind of conditions, it's hard to really play everything that you're able and capable of doing.
Yeah, man. Florida State got off to such a great start offensively. They got the ball, went on, I think, around an 8-minute drive. I think they ran 12 plays and ran 8 of them, and ran for, I want to say, 52 yards. And you're thinking, okay, this is going to be the day. They look great on offense. They come out and run it right at Boston College with great success. Boston College had the 4th-ranked rushing defense in the country coming into the game on Saturday, and Florida State looked more than up to the task of running against them. And so they marched down the field, scored a touchdown, and I think most of us thought, okay, this is going to be the game Florida State fans have been waiting on. And it just did not work out that way because, as we saw in Boston College's ensuing possession, they kind of basically did the exact same thing. They didn't get a touchdown, but they were able to run the ball, pick up 4, 5, 6 yards of carry, and really kind of drain the clock. I joked at one point that at this rate the game was going to be over by about 5:30, and it didn't work out quite that way. But that's just the kind of game it was. Jimbo Fisher this morning said that it reminded him a lot of an NFL game in terms of just sort of plotting offenses, controlling the clock. Not a lot of big plays in terms of yardage, and just sort of a steady grind toward the conclusion.
Yeah, it was quite fast in the beginning. Both teams had 14 plays in their first drive, and both went over 50 yards to do so. And, eventually Florida State did pull this one out, but it was close all the way through. That's 2 straight years now that Boston College has given Florida State the fits. This is a team in Adazio. He knows what Florida State is able to do, and he's got his team prepared to face Florida State each and every year.
Man, I kind of like Steve Adazio as a coach. He was a guy, he was the offensive coordinator, he was the offensive coordinator for a little bit at Florida, and
yep.
For a few reasons things didn't quite work out there. He got hired at Temple, I want to say. He was a coach there for a few years before moving to Boston College. And I remember thinking when BC hired him that I wasn't sure how good of a fit that was going to be, and some of his credentials maybe he had called into question. But gosh, I think especially through 2 years, you want to talk about maximizing what is available and hope for the future. And I think Steve Adazio is the guy for them. And if I were them, I would be pretty concerned about somebody like would Michigan be interested in Steve Adazio as far as establishing a coach who has turned 2 programs around and got them on the right track, and then plays I think the way that like the Big Ten wants to play, with big giant offensive linemen opening up holes for big running backs, that sort of thing. And he seems like he'd be a perfect fit for a school like that. So BC, in my opinion, would do well to try to hang on to him.
Yeah, his name is out there on the market for some of these big jobs as well. He has done a great job with what he's had at Boston College. I mean, again, you look at it, they took Florida State right down to the wire last year. They do it again this year. 7 seconds it took all the way to the end of the game for Florida State to pull this one out. And I want to hit on Rashad Green, though, first, with what he's been able to do. 2 records here on Saturday. He now has the most yards in a career. He had broken the receptions record earlier this season, now has the yards, and he also broke the most consecutive catches in games. He's got 40 now consecutive games that he's had a catch.
40 games. That's a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, you really can't say enough about Rashad and his game. 8 catches, over 100 yards. I think it was the 7th 100-yard game of the season for him. They've played 11. He's had 100 yards receiving, at least 100 yards receiving, in 7 of them. So, yeah, what a remarkable day he had. Even more so under the backdrop of the arm and elbow injury that he suffered late in the second half there, where, at the time when you saw it, I think everybody was kind of holding their breath thinking, oh, gosh, he looked like he was in pain. The camera sort of zoomed in on his face, and he looked like he was seriously hurting. Walking off the field with team trainer Jake File was going quickly to the locker room and was sort of holding his arm in a way that made you really fear the worst, as far as maybe a bone break or some sort of joint or tendon being seriously damaged. But he was able to come back out just a few minutes later, really, and I think everybody at that point had breathed just a huge sigh of relief to see him back out there and contributing. So a really impressive effort by Rashad Green to play through the pain of that injury and also have just another big day. And really, I don't know if it's possible to overstate what he means to the team and to the program in recent years.
Well, every time that Coach Jimbo Fisher talks about him, he praises him so high. Just all his character is amazing. You had a one-on-one interview with him as well. What was that like? Obviously he's a great guy. What was that like, sitting down with him and talking to him one-on-one?
It was pretty cool, man. Rashad's a pretty quiet dude, pretty measured, but I really feel that, especially over the last couple of weeks of his senior year, I think he's opened up a little more and kind of let people into to his personality and what he's like. And I was talking to somebody earlier today, and in this sort of era of college athletics, it's really hard to attach any kind of character judgments to athletes or even coaches or anybody, because you just don't know them. You know what I mean? Like you interview players and you talk to them for 5-10 minutes once a week. But you don't know them any more than they would know you if they spent 5 weeks talking to you about what you did on Saturday. But with Rashad, man, I feel pretty confident saying that he is a good guy. He made mention of it. I asked him sort of reflecting to reflect on his 4 years here, and he said, look, I've never been the type of guy to get in trouble. I've never had any problems when I was here. I'm just here to kind of do my job. I want to play hard, I want to work hard, and I want to succeed in football. And man, I just think that if this is going to, I know I'm fawning over Rashad Green now, but if you're a Florida State fan, that's somebody that you can feel good rooting for, somebody you feel good about representing your team and your alma mater. I think Rashad is really just a real good example of what college sports can be. I know I'm probably embarrassing myself with all these things that I'm saying about him, but it's hard to say enough good things about the guy.
Absolutely. I mean, Coach Fisher is the same way. Rashad Green is in the top of the nation, the top 10 in receiving yards, receptions per game, and receiving yards per game as well. To stick on the note of seniors, it was senior day against Boston College. They were honored before the game. Move over to Carlos Williams, who has yet another rushing touchdown. All his rushing touchdowns have come in the red zone, which just shows his power, his strength to get through the line. And he's just the 4th Nole to post multiple seasons of 10-plus rushing touchdowns. And he does that on Saturday. This guy has really kind of figured out the running back position.
Yeah, no, I think he looks really good, and not to transition too quickly, but he and Dalvin Cook, I think now you almost have a bit of a tandem there with what they can do and what they're good at. Jimbo Fisher talked about it today. Florida State hasn't always run the ball well across the entire game, but when they've had to run the ball, more often than not, and kind of surprisingly enough, they've been able to do it. You saw it again on the last drive of the game against Boston College, where they were driving down for the field goal. The first play of that drive was a run by Carlos Williams, where he sort of runs into the line, gets stopped, cuts back, moves against the direction of the play, and rips off, I want to say it was like between 15 and 20 yards to get that drive going. It's been really impressive when FSU has needed to run the ball, and I would say red zone and goal line is, no matter when the situation is, or excuse me, what time the game is at that point. That's when you need to run the ball, and Florida State has been able to do that.
Yeah, that's what Jimbo Fisher alluded to in his press conference. You can check out the highlights on Seminoles.com. Tim's got his highlights as well in a written article right there on Seminoles.com. But to stick on Dalvin, he said that he likes to use him in a situation where he thinks there's going to be a need for a lot of cuts. This guy, he can cut on a dime. I mean, this guy is very agile. He's a pretty good running back as we've seen this year.
I would say so, man. and you know what I thought was the most interesting to me? I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know exactly how many carries he got on the last drive of that game. But he got more than a handful. He was really kind of the feature back on that last drive. And I thought what was really significant about that, and I tried to allude to this with Jimbo Fisher in his press conference earlier today, was just that, here's a guy who's a freshman, game on the line, who, quite frankly has had some problems holding on to the ball this season with wet and rainy conditions, which makes the ball harder to hold on to. And
right.
Yet, Jimbo Fisher and the coaching staff has no reservations about giving him the ball, trusting him in a big situation. And he came through. And I thought that was, maybe more than anything as far as, the big runs or the cutbacks or any of that. I thought that being able to come through and produce the way they needed him to in a big-time situation like that was a really big part of Dalvin Cook's story this season.
He finished with 14 carries, 76 yards, averaging 5.4 yards a carry. Pretty impressive as well. And back to the seniors, though, Nick O'Leary. You look at the past two games for Nick O'Leary, 7 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. That touchdown came on Saturday. He had a total of 59 yards in that game, and he looks like the safety valve for Florida State. Whenever you need a big catch, you can't find anybody else, it seems like he can come in the clutch.
Yeah, and that was a really big play. That touchdown had come right after, I think.
Right after Rashad got hurt.
Yeah, exactly right. And it also gave FSU the lead going into to halftime.
Yep.
I think we were tied up at that point. And that was just moments after Rashad got hurt. So yeah, man, we talked about having those seniors step up and having so many receiving options, and they haven't all been consistent at the same time. But I think we said this, maybe a month or two ago before the Notre Dame game. They have so many capable options that if somebody's having an off day, odds are not all 5 of those guys, between Rashad, Nick O'Leary, Bobo Wilson, Travis Rudolph, Ermon Lane, it's going to be a rare day when all 5 of those guys are having a tough day. And I think you saw, when Rashad got hurt and he'd had a couple drops in the game too, one of which led to an interception. Bobo Wilson dropped a pass. Those guys may be off a little bit, at least at certain times. And then there's Nick O'Leary to make a beautiful catch, on the corner route over the middle and to the left of the end zone to get that touchdown. And that was a great throw by Jameis Winston too.
Well, we'll stick right there. Jimbo Fisher said this may have been his best game yet. I mean, you look at what he was able to do in the rain is what was really stuck out to Jimbo Fisher. And you look at his stats, 22 of 32, 281 yards and a touchdown pass. Every game he's played, he's thrown a touchdown pass. He's 24-0 in his career. And yet Jimbo Fisher says that this may have been his best game yet.
Yeah, man, and you know what? I thought so too. You saw just the one touchdown, but Rashad had the one go off his hands. That could have been a touchdown. And
Bobo Wilson.
Yeah. And he said the 22 of 32, which is a fine line. There's nothing really wrong with that. I think that's pretty good for for a lot of quarterbacks. But, Jimbo said Jimbo counted at least 4 drops that were on the receivers. So, if you add those into the equation, well, now it's 26 of 32, which is a pretty astounding completion percentage. You probably have another touchdown in there. The one interception was just a dart to Rashad Green that bounced off his hands and into a defender's arms. So that was kind of a fluky kind of play. And really, man, I think the way that Jameis played on Saturday, so much of what made it such a nice performance really doesn't show up in the stat book. It's really, I think, just the throws that he made, the windows that he threw into that were just right on the money, right in the breadbaskets for some of these receivers. He was really on target in a way that, like I said, just doesn't quite show up in the box score.
Yeah, he was looking quite impressive, but that was not the talk of everybody after the game about Jameis Winston. The talk was him pushing the referee out of the way. Again, when I saw it, I didn't think twice about it. Jimbo Fisher said the same thing. But yet, when I wake up Sunday, all I see on Twitter, on social media is how he should have been ejected, how this and that. And Coach talked about it today in the press conference, saying, it's different because there's 8 referees. But I go back to the game last year, the Pac-12 game, where I forget the 2 teams going at it, but the clock is ticking down. Referees in the way, can't get the snap off, and they lose.
I forgot all about that.
Pac-12 game, can't remember who was playing, but, the same situation. Referees in the way, you're unable to snap the ball. So I kind of understand where Jameis is. He wants to get the ball snapped. You're not in that situation.
Yeah.
But, that's kind of where we're at,
It was just a weird set of circumstances there. It was really confusing at first. I think everybody was confused. Like Jimbo said today, and I thought his explanation made sense in that they're experimenting with the 8-man crew this year, and usually, and this is an important distinction, with a 7-man crew, there's an official standing over the ball on the other side of the line of scrimmage, between the center and the defense. Well, with the 8-man crew, now you've got an official between the center who has the ball and the quarterback, which seems a little bit odd to me. I certainly can't remember that being an issue over the last however many games, and obviously neither did Jimbo Fisher or Jameis Winston. It's not as if Florida State hasn't run the no huddle at all this season. So I don't know. And there was also some confusion with the substitutions. I think Jimbo said today that Carlos Williams had gotten a little nicked up and was limping, so they subbed him off for Dalvin Cook, which then meant that Boston College could make their substitutions too. Just a weird set of circumstances. And, you'd like to think it's not really a huge deal, but then I remember, scrolling through Twitter a few moments after that, and I saw the headline from one of the sports blogs that was like, Jameis Winston shoves an official and gets away with it, and then you just sort of say, oh boy, here we go again. And Jimbo Fisher alluded to that too as well today. They said that people love for there to be controversy around Jameis Winston, so whenever there's something, this is what's going to come up. So, it's par for the course, I'd say, and in a few days' time, you'd like to think that nothing will be remembered much of it.
And to flip side now, again, Jameis Winston had a miraculous day, the controversy, whatnot. But you flip over to the defense, and you're not able to win that game if you don't have a good defense. And Florida State showed a pretty good defense. No interceptions in this game, however, but plenty of tackle for losses. But, yeah, they didn't throw. They ran the ball. Yeah. And that's going to be the question is, when you face Florida, they're going to do the exact same thing. And people are going to wonder, how are we going to stack up against Florida when you allow 240 yards for Boston College on the ground. But when they needed stops, they got stops. It's kind of like our running game. When you need to run the ball, you run the ball. But Florida State's defense came up pretty big in a couple situations.
Yeah, man, I still think there are some areas that are concerning, particularly with the run defense, and then obviously, the long touchdown that Boston College had looked like the result of a blown coverage of some sort. Mm-hmm. We've seen enough of those this season. Between this game, Louisville game, like Notre Dame had a big one, Miami's had a few. It's just the kind of thing you'd really like to see tightened up. I'm not sure what the problem is. I'm not even sure if it's a consistent problem across the board or if it's the same thing happening. But, gosh, that's really got to stop. You can't have receivers and tight ends, just running downfield 40 yards wide open. Yeah, you kind of alluded to it, and I'm sure that we'll touch on this more when we preview Florida a little later this week. But I think, Boston College, and really to an extent, man, the Citadel kind of gave the blueprint for how to beat Florida State. The Citadel, I think, doesn't have the athletes, and Boston College, man, they probably came closer than you would like to admit. But it's run the ball, control the clock, limit possessions. as much as you might like to have them, the 25, 35, 40-yard runs, they help. But what you really want if you're playing on offense against Florida State, I think, is to rip off 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards of carry, pick up a first down every couple of plays, have these, I think, Boston College was going on drives that took, 12, 14, 15 plays and moved the ball 50, 60 yards, which is not great on the old yards per play average, but it certainly drains the clock. It keeps Jameis Winston and Rashad Green and Dalvin Cook and those guys on the sideline. And I think, in the second half, what you saw was, Florida State's defense, no matter how tired or physical, no matter how strong, physical, whatever they are, I blew my little tease here, they were tired. They were gassed, and it's hard to stop the run in the fourth quarter when you've been on the field the entire game. I think Boston College held like an 8 or 9 minute advantage in time of possession. That's tough no matter who you are. And so to me, that cat is out of the bag, probably has been for a while. I think if somebody's going to beat Florida State, that's the way that they're going to do it. And I thought, Boston College came a little close for comfort.
Oh, absolutely. And, the thing is if the time of possession, we talked about it before Miami, if they were able to take away enough of the clock, Miami comes away with a victory. Same thing with Boston College. So the question is about the run game. You saw Florida play Georgia earlier this game, and all they did was run the ball, and they came away with the victory. Right. So, again, we'll preview that game later on this week, but just a little bit, to talk about that for now. But, if that's what they're going to do, this is going to be a very close game on Saturday.
It certainly could be, man. I think it's going to be interesting. Again, we talked about it a couple weeks ago with Miami. I think there's something to be said for rivalry games and the emotion and the intensity and the kind of just uniqueness that comes along with those. The cliche is throw out the records, and I hate to say stuff like that, but I think in a lot of senses it's true. And then the fact that it's Coach Will Muschamp. It'll be his last game with the team. He's not coaching whatever bowl game that Florida is in.
Right.
So they're going to want to send him out as a winner. So I think you're going to get whatever Florida's best shot is. I think that's what you're probably going to see. And the fact that they can run the ball. They don't throw the ball very much. It's pretty common for Treon Harris, their starting quarterback, to throw the ball less than 10 times in a game. So they're going to line up. They're going to get physical, and they're going to run. Now, it's kind of a double-edged sword to me, if you're Florida State, because on the one hand, you've played three teams really in the last few weeks in Virginia, Miami, and Boston College. That's exactly what they do. So you have experience playing against it. On the other hand, man, you've been in those tough physical games each of the last 3 weeks. I think it has to be a grind, both mentally and physically, and it's coming again. So I think Florida State's defense is going to have its resolve tested on Saturday, and I think it'll be a good challenge. I think they're absolutely capable of responding and playing the way that they need to win the game. But I do think they're going to be in for a fight.
Well, obviously, it's going to be a big start is going to be the men up front for Florida State. But then the question is linebackers, and one of your linebackers you're not going to have for the first half, and Matthew Thomas, who Jimbo Fisher said played maybe one of his best games and then was ejected for targeting helmet to helmet. So he will not be able to play in the first half, and that's going to hurt Florida State a little bit.
Yeah, it really is, and it's a shame because I think Matthew Thomas was really kind of coming into his own. It took him a little while to get back. He couldn't play for the first half of the season, and still like he was dealing a little bit with some injury issues throughout the last handful of games. And I thought against Boston College, he really looked like the player that we were expecting to see all season back in April. When we saw him, just sort of raising Cain throughout spring practice in the Garnet and Gold game. He looked like that player, but then the helmet-to-helmet contact that I really don't think there was any argument there. I think maybe the first targeting and ejection penalty in college football history that nobody took any real issue with the call. But it is a shame for Florida State. I thought he was maybe one of the guys, certainly one of the linebackers who was fast enough to close in on the ball carrier and also big and physical enough to fight through and shed some blocks and bring a guy down. So yeah, man, they're going to miss him in that first half.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Florida State has come up with the big stops, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can do it against Florida. We will preview that game later on this week. But let's flip over now to the special teams side of things. Roberto Aguayo, 2 big field goals, missed one, though, just the second one this season, 3rd in his career. But the biggest field goal may have come there with 7 seconds left in the game, and he's able to. Yeah. And he nailed it.
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting. After the game, Roberto was holding his post-game interview session, and I asked him, "When's the last time you hit a game-winning kick like that?" He said, "Oh, no, never." I never made one. Oh, okay. I said, ever? He said, yeah, man, not in high school, not in college, not even in Pop Warner. I said, well, so yeah, how did that feel? And obviously, he was really excited about that. But I mean, it makes sense. If you're a kicker playing on good teams, you're not usually in that spot. And his point, he's right, is that it was a 26-yarder, which is certainly within a makeable distance.
Chip shot for him.
You could say that, but yeah, his point, and he's right, is that there's been plenty of college kickers out there who've missed those distances. So when the game's on the line like that, you're just happy to take the make and go from there. And obviously he was rewarded with the ACC Specialist of the Week honors for his efforts.
Yeah, he made a 26-yarder there at the end of the game. His other one was a 37-yard field goal. And then Kason Beatty, we've talked about him a lot recently with the way he's been punting the ball. He averaged 49 yards a punt. He only had to punt twice in this game. But I think the biggest play for him was not punting. I think it was him placing that ball at the end of the game. That snap went behind his head. He had to go behind, catch it, and bring it in front of him. And I thought he did a fantastic job.
Yeah,
there.
He really did. And Roberto Aguayo gave him credit for that too. Yeah, like you said, just a little bit off on the equation, if you will. There's just so much timing, and everything has to be done mechanically the right way, and the timing has to be just right for the ball to be down on the ground in time for the kicker to hit it. And any variation in that equation, so to speak, and that assembly line really can throw off the whole thing. I think that's what you saw happen on Roberto's miss earlier in the game. So yes, all the credit goes to Kason Beatty for one, for keeping his head when he sees that snap is going awry, and two, actually physically getting a hold of the ball and getting it down in time. Who knows what happens if that doesn't come true. So
yeah, both players playing very well there for Florida State to help them pull away the 20-17 victory. Tim, what do you pull away from this?
It's just another one of these games, right?
Yeah, we're used to this now.
Yeah, at this point, it's kind of funny. I thought it was interesting, just from my own little perspective, that we've gotten so used to seeing Florida State fall behind and then have to rally back and come back in the fourth quarter. This time, you saw Florida State build a lead and then have to survive another team's comeback bid, which I thought was another interesting twist in the dramatic ways to win category that Florida State has done so well in this year. And again, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier. The takeaway to me is that I think Boston College showed a path to beat FSU if you can do it, if you can play physical and run the ball and control the clock. I think Florida that's certainly what they want to do. Whether or not they're capable remains to be seen. And then, looking even further down the line, we do know Florida State's going to play Georgia Tech in the ACC Championship game, regardless of what happens against Florida this weekend. And nobody in the country runs the ball more than Georgia Tech. And so, I think the run defense of this team is going to be really front and center, really in for 2 weeks of pretty significant tests that I think stand between them and a spot in the college football playoff. And not that I don't expect them to rise up and meet those challenges, but I don't think FSU has an easy path between now and the playoff at all.
It's interesting. The run defense against Virginia looked very good. They started looking very good against Miami in the second half, and maybe not as good in the Boston College game. Do you think that the defense has not looked as good going down the stretch?
No, man. I think they got the stops when they had to have them, and I look at rushing yardage as well as total yardage, and 240 yards on the ground is a lot, but at the same time, again, Boston College didn't throw very much. So, and I said this to some, I can't remember who I said it to in the press box after the game. I said, look, I'm not saying that the defense doesn't have a few things that they want to shore up, but at the end of the day, they scored 17 points. I think if you tell Florida State, your opponents are going to score 17 points every single game, Florida State's going to go undefeated. They certainly would have. This is the first time in Jameis Winston's career they scored less than 30. I'll say if Florida scores 17 on Saturday, I think Florida State will win pretty decisively. So again, it's the old bend but don't break type of thing. You'd like to not bend, but if you're going to, and they have a few times, they certainly have bounced back and risen up when they absolutely had to have it.
Well, to your point, Boston College threw the ball 11 times in the entire game.
Yeah.
Went 6 of 11. I mean, so you're going to get your yards on the ground when you run it 51 times in a ball game.
Right.
And they had possession of the ball for 33 minutes and 47 seconds. So, I mean, it is kind of tough to totally stop someone when they're going to run the ball 51 times. But that's what Florida is going to probably do.
Yeah, and again, that's absolutely what Georgia Tech's going to do. So a good preview for things to come.
So we'll preview the Florida game later this week. To wrap up this podcast, let's talk about a couple other sports, primarily soccer. Soccer was in the final 16 teams. They beat UCF on a goal by Grubka, and now they're heading to the Elite Eight. Once again, under Krikorian, they've at least made it to the Elite Eight under him.
Yeah, every year for like the last 10 years.
Yeah, every year under him.
And against South Carolina this year, we all were expecting North Carolina instead of South
Right.
Carolina. So that'll be interesting. You have to think that FSU is expecting a spot in the College Cup at this point. Against South Carolina at home on Friday. I think Florida State should be considered a pretty heavy favorite there. And again, what a remarkable accomplishment that would be. It would be 4 straight College Cups, for your 4-year seniors. You're in the Final Four of women's soccer every single year, which is just a remarkable achievement.
It would be the first time in school history, and you can come see the Seminoles Friday, 2 p.m. after you get all your Black Friday shopping done. Come over to the soccer complex, 2 p.m.
That sounds good.
It's actually an hour after volleyball. They'll be hosting their last game at home. They could be hosting postseason, but this is the last regular season game. They honored their seniors on Friday, and then they had 2 more home games. They played Sunday, and they'll play Friday at 1 p.m. Women's basketball undefeated. They go to Cancun this week. This is going to be really their real test. They play Washington first, then Hartford, and it'll be a good tournament for them. The men, however, have not been faring so well. They dropped 2 in Connecticut this weekend.
Yeah, and you know what, man? Honestly, I think the bigger concern there is not even the losses. It's the fact that Devin Bookert has a foot injury. He apparently is not going to play tomorrow night against. I think they play Furman. He's not going to play. I think I saw Aaron Thomas is questionable. That was a scary situation there, where I guess after halftime, he left and had to be hospitalized for a little while with I think Coach Hamilton called it some mysterious dizziness. I think they expect him to be fine, but they're not sure if he's going to be available. And at that point, you're talking about some key pieces to your team that aren't available, and that's how. In early season, I think they're on a 3-game skid, which in and of itself isn't a big deal. But if you start taking out key components of the team as these early season games begin to pile up, and you start leaning more and more heavily on younger, inexperienced players, you worry a little bit about it maybe snowballing. So I think it would be really nice to see the FSU men come out tomorrow night and just play well. Have a nice crisp game and just get one back in the win column.
Well, the biggest thing is you want to pick up as many wins in the non-conference because you want those 20 wins to get into the talks of getting into the NCAA tournament once again.
Right.
And the other question is the non-conference schedule that they have scheduled themselves. This is a tough non-conference schedule. They want to get prepared for the ACC, but these are some good teams that they're playing.
No, absolutely, man. And it looked great for a while there. Starting off with Manhattan, who was a tournament team last year, and then they were able to beat them. Went tooth and nail with Northeastern a couple days later. I thought probably should have won that game, and then obviously between UMass and Providence, those are quality teams that are regular fixtures in the NCAA tournament, and especially against UMass. FSU was right there. I think they were leading at halftime and just couldn't hold on late. So. You're not all that far off from being 3-1, and there certainly have been some positive things. I think Phil Kofer looks like he's going to be a really nice player. Xavier Athan-Mays, he scored 22 yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like a guy who may be finding his shooting stroke after struggling a little bit over the first part of the year, at least with his shooting. So there's lots to feel good and encouraged about, but you really want to start putting some in the win column and chipping away at that 1-3.
So looking forward to this week. You have men's basketball at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. They also play on Friday at 6 p.m. Soccer will be at home. They'll be hosting one more Elite 8 game. They'll play at 2 o'clock. Volleyball is at 1 on Wednesday, and then at 1 o'clock as well on Friday, and then the women are on the road in Cancun. So definitely plenty of opportunities to see your Noles at home. Make sure you get out to all those events, and then Florida State hosting Florida on Saturday, the rivalry game to end the regular season. So we will wrap things up. We'll come back with a preview for the weekend. So alongside Tim Linnefeld, I'm Jonathan Schlacey. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.